Hello, I'm Swimscape, and in this video I want to introduce new and old CK3 players to a couple of chapters in Sun Tzu's The Art of War, while also educating you on various CK3 war mechanics. Drawing knowledge from a piece of writing thousands of years old to help us out in a video game about being a medieval ruler? Rather fitting, I think. I'm going to be quoting Sun Tzu's work a lot, so I've decided to leave a PDF copy of the book in the description if you want to read or follow along or whatever. And in this video, I will be covering terrain. Because the natural formation of the country is the soldier's best ally, but a power of estimating the adversary, of controlling the forces of victory, and of shrewdly calculating difficulties, dangers, and distances constitutes the test of a great general. He who knows these things, and in fighting puts his knowledge into practice, will win his battles. He who knows them not, nor practices them, will surely be defeated. Page 90. So listen up, my liege, as we explore Sun Tzu's Art of CK3 War. Unlike Sun Tzu's real world, CK3 is a video game and currently contains 14 tangible terrain forms: plains, floodplains, farmlands, forests, hills, mountains, deserts, oasis, drylands, wetlands, taiga, jungles, and steppe. We also recognize the unofficial coastal and overseas/embarkation terrains as equal, if not greater, among these tangible terrain forms. This is because of the dexterous fisherman cultural tradition, which grants a whopping +5 coastal advantage, an additional +1 defender advantage per coastal holding level. And also because of the massive -30 advantage disembarked troops face for 30 days after landing. Knowing what type of terrain you will be campaigning in is important, as each type of terrain has different attributes that affect battles, namely combat width and defender advantage. Here's a chart from the CK3 wiki that shows each of the terrain forms and their respective combat width, defender advantage, and other effects. Namely, desert mountains giving a -30% defender retreat losses, and wetlands giving an additional +25% retreat losses and +20% fatal casualties. Additionally, we recognize politically aggressive, hostile, defensive, and neutral governing realms adjectively to the tangible terrain forms. In less words, who occupies what and where matters. Supply limits are a factor to keep in mind when thinking about terrain. Unless the odds are insurmountable in your favor, maintain ample supplies within your armies. While defending or attacking, split your armies up according to supply limits, recuperating lost supplies in friendly territory and delaying starvation or rout in aggressive or hostile territory. Sun Tzu said, we may distinguish 6 kinds of terrain to wit: 1. Accessible ground. 2. Entangling ground. 3. Temporizing ground. 4. Narrow passes. 5. Precipitous heights. 6. Positions at a great distance from the enemy. Page 86. Ground which can be freely traversed by both sides is called accessible. With regard to ground of this nature, be before the enemy in occupying the raised and sunny spots, and carefully guard your line of supplies. Page 86. Accessible ground in CK3 can be defined as the territory you have access to without taking direct attrition. Counties are split into baronies, each with their own individual terrain. Know your target, its wetlands and deserts, its mountains and plains, its fortifications and fragility, its ruler and spymaster. Take care to be on the defensive in hills, mountains, and fortifications. Conversely, be on the attack in plains and drylands without refuge. You will always defend in a siege of your own lands, gaining access to fortification bonuses. Always defend sieges. So in turn, do not siege your opponent's lands without knowledge of them and their allies' whereabouts. If a barony has no fortification, or the holding is a temple or a city, the one present first will be the defender. Friendly territory or not, use the land and environment to your advantage. Ground which can be abandoned but is hard to reoccupy is called entangling. From a position of this sort, if the enemy is unprepared, you may sally forth and defeat him. But if the enemy is prepared for your coming, and you fail to defeat him, then, return being impossible, disaster will ensue. Page 87. Entangling ground on CK3 can be defined as castles with high fortification levels, either by buildings, by terrain, or by both. Castles on coastlines or islands that require embarkation are really good examples. Catholic crusades to Jerusalem often face this problem, resulting in catastrophic failure. Crusades fail 9 times out of 10 in CK3 because there are highly fortified castles everywhere surrounding Jerusalem. The seat of Abbasid power lies in Egypt, directly adjacent. Disembarked Catholic troops funnel into the death trap that is the eastern Mediterranean coastline and Abrahamic Holy Lands. Take weaker target if your main one is heavily fortified or garrisoned. Thin out smaller armies in your own fortified locations or capture strategic resupply points. Both are different ways you can combat entangling ground and earn war score in CK3. When the position is such that neither side will gain by making the first move, it is called temporizing ground. In a position of this sort, even though the enemy should offer us an attractive bait, it will be advisable not to stir forth, but rather to retreat, thus enticing the enemy in his turn. Then, when part of his army has come out, we may deliver our attack with advantage. Page 87. In my opinion, temporizing ground is by far the most situational and rather philosophical of the ground forms explored by Sun Tzu. The easiest example of this is when you and your opponent's armies and power match. Neither of you is in a position where advancing is advantageous. Attempting a siege will result in a battle not in your favor. Avoid these encounters, if at all possible. Prolonged war is not advisable. If you must, bait them very carefully, dragging them into your territory. When they are in your territory, they will face attrition and supply loss if their armies are large enough, or it is winter. Attacking with advantage when they attempt a siege or are undersupplied. There is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. It is only one who is thoroughly acquainted with the evils of war that can thoroughly understand the profitable way of carrying it on. Page 34. With regard to narrow passes, if you can occupy them first, let them be strongly garrisoned and await the advent of the enemy. Should the army forestall you in occupying a pass, do not go after him if the pass is fully garrisoned, but only if it was weakly garrisoned. The narrow passes of CK3 are found in and around the ends of the map the bridges spanning the major rivers, and around impassable ground. And what Sun Tzu said goes. Blocking a narrow path can add months of time to a siege progress, enough to win wars. I have an excellent example of narrow ground here to show you. I am unable to advance in any advantageous way, and I am forced to attack head-on into the enemy to stall the siege. With regard to precipitous heights, if you are beforehand with your adversary, you should occupy the raised and sunny spots, and there wait for him to come up. If the enemy has occupied them before you, do not follow him, but retreat and try to entice him away. Page 88. Rippling hills, imposing mountains, and impregnable fortifications are your dearest friends in times of war. Keep them close, cherish them, and call on them in your time of need, and in turn, be there when they need you. The only time you should engage with an enemy in terrains such as these is when you will be on the defensive. If the enemy is sieging a friendly castle, that will count as defending. Use these opportunities to attack with advantage. This also means that if you are caught sieging enemy territory, it will count as defensive for them. If you are on the offensive, only commit to a siege when you can finish it. If you are fighting a weaker target or a split force, eliminate the opposing troops before they converge and before you commit to a siege. Doing so will ensure that you will not be interrupted or caught off guard by a large army of enemy troops while sieging. If you are situated at a great distance from the enemy and the strength of the two armies is equal, it is not easy to provoke a battle, and fighting will be to your disadvantage. Page 88. If you can, avoid fighting wars that are over a long distance. Your troops will often run out of supplies before the fighting even starts, facing attrition with no friendly territory to reinforce or resupply. Much like a crusade, these fights are usually a slog if the forces are equally matched. Conflict will take years, even decades of game time to finish. If war is necessary, one way to circumvent this problem is to get territory nearby that is easier to take first. A single county can be a mighty stronghold in which you can send your armies back to resupply, reinforce, or retreat to if necessary. Not to mention, you can raise your troops much closer. The general who advances without coveting fame and retreats without fearing disgrace, whose only thought is to protect his country and do good service for his sovereign, is the jewel of the kingdom. Page 91.